Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Backtrekking, the podcast where we look back at the real-world inspirations behind classic episodes of Star Trek. I'm one of your hosts, Caliban, and when a woman offering you chicken asks leg or breast, the correct answer is wing. I'm joined on this episode by my co-host.
I'm Gooey Fame, and you can call me the Cat.
We've returned to explore the stories behind your favorite Trek tales, and we're back this week to present our takes on two stories of intrigue set against backdrops of escapist luxury. It's the 1955 Alfred Hitchcock romp To Catch a Thief and the first season Star Trek Enterprise episode, 2 Days and 2 Nights.
Yeah, I was like, what? I couldn't remember what was going on when we decided this episode, but I was like, what's going on when I was watching some parts of this?
What's going on is that, Mike Sussman or somebody, Brandon Braga, says that these two are related. One is inspired by the other, but we can interrogate that premise as we get into talking about the show. Mm-hmm. First, let's talk about a little bit of the news in the world of Trek. And this is old news now, but it's happened since we talked last. You know, right, that Mission Seattle, the official Star Trek convention, has been canceled for 2023.
No, I hadn't heard that.
Oh,
they say
now
why?
you know.
Do you know
they
why?
did not say why. We don't know why, and I don't know if we're ever going to know why. But I know that as soon as, the last day or whatever it was of Chicago of this year, they announced that it would be held in Seattle of next year, and then there was really no more information after that. Here we are 6 months later, no more information. And so I think a lot of people were just assuming something is wrong. And ReedPop, the company that runs the con, has come out and announced there will be no Star Trek, official Star Trek con in Seattle or anywhere as far as we know.
It's just not in the budget, maybe.
I don't know. I don't know the answer. And I think that I had mentioned before when we went to Mission Chicago this year that, everything went fine. It was fun. But it didn't, I don't want to say it felt weird, but it felt a little lower scale and lower energy than I would expect a official Star Trek con to have. I mean, it was pretty well attended. But it just seemed kind of like a little off. And I never thought that there wouldn't be another show, but it seems like something might be going on between ReedPop and Star Trek / Paramount. Although that's just speculation on my part.
You're saying maybe it's not what they hoped it was or something.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. I didn't have much to compare it to, obviously, so I was like, oh, this seems nice, but I could imagine. Well, mostly because it was like, it felt all kind of in one area and like, it was like actually comfortable to get around. And I was imagining this being like a sprawling event that like there's people packed in everywhere, but instead I was like, oh, it was like chill the whole time. So, but I know for them that's not, they want it bigger,
Yeah, which and that was my experience too. I thought that there was a lot of great guests, and I thought that the fans were really enthusiastic. And like I said, it wasn't packed solid. Maybe they felt like the door was too low for them. They expected to have more tickets sold to make more money. I don't know, but whatever it was, like I said before, they had not started selling tickets for the event. So a lot of people were thinking, is this going to happen? People still made their hotel reservations, of course, and their travel bookings. And so those will have to, be changed or canceled now. But yeah, it's a little weird to see, at this point. And then, of course, the European official Star Trek con destination, Star Trek, whatever city it's in, has also been canceled. So the only official Star Trek event currently is the Star Trek cruise.
Interesting. Are there other, has that happened with other cons, or is this really strange?
It is a little weird. If you go to the Destination Star Trek site, it just says, until the next time, and that's it. There are no links. Reed Pop obviously is a huge company that does cons all over the place, and they're still doing cons. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, it's weird that it's weird there's no Star Trek con. A company called Creation Entertainment used to be the official Star Trek convention purveyor. I don't know why they are not continuing to be the official Star Trek con, and they are still holding a Star Trek con, the one that they've always held in Las Vegas, which is run for more than a few years now, and that one is still going. So I don't know. There's a lot of gossip, no real facts on the ground.
There'll probably be some like Star Trek Day stream like online where they reveal a bunch of stuff, you know.
I hope so.
Because I don't know, I can't admit like that could just be the other thing is like maybe they're just like, oh, maybe we don't want to do in person events anymore. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, it's possible. So this is what a terrible example. But here's an example for you. When I went to college, the cafeteria was run by my college, and I worked in the cafeteria, and it was managed and owned by the college. But the college, after a while, decided that they wanted to save money on that. And I went to a city where it was a college town. There's a lot of colleges there, and there was like one company that kind of ran. They were a catering company. They kind of ran a lot of the cafeterias in a lot of schools in town, and so they went with those guys. Now I'm not saying that it was well managed. It wasn't. I worked there when it was run by the school, and it was basically controlled by like a cabal of like student managers who kind of did whatever they want. They turned it over to this other company, and things got a lot more efficient. But a lot of people, lost their jobs. A lot of those middle managers were gone, and then we started to see that kind of thing where you get ham on Monday, broccoli on Tuesday, ham and cheese broccoli on Wednesday.
Uh-huh.
Scrapings on Friday. You started to see things kind of contract due to efficiency, and so it's possible that Reed Pop, as a company who, like I said, has been very successful running a lot of cons, had a bar that they wanted to hit, and not enough people attended, or it kind of cost more than they were expecting it was going to cost, and they're like, you know what, we're going to stop this until we can find a way to be more profitable. That's my
Yeah.
guess.
I can buy that. I can
Because
buy that for sure.
yeah, because although I complained about the scale, I mean the Chicago Con was fine, and I thought it was perfectly scaled, and I was thinking about they were gonna hold the Seattle one at the big convention center in Seattle, which is a very big space. They don't have to take up the whole thing, so maybe they're thinking the rent's too high, or they are based on the numbers of Chicago, they don't think they can get enough people in the door. Um, all those things are possible, but as a big company with a lot of resources, this is where you honor your commitment to the fans by finding a smaller venue, by finding a way to do the show still. And they're just like, no, there's no show.
Yeah. Yeah, you see that a lot nowadays. If it's not, if we can't go big, we're going to go home. Is, I think, kind of the mentality.
Yeah, it is. It's saddening. And I hope that we see an official Star Trek convention soon, because, that's kind of what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a lot of
That's
fun.
why all this exists.
I was thinking, if there was another one nearby, I was like, I'd love to go again.
Yeah. There's got to be something, especially where you are. It's such a con area, being so centrally located. So hopefully we'll have news on that if that happens in the future. Are you aware of what's going on between George Takei and William Shatner right now?
A little bit. Yeah, I saw a little bit and like kind of chuckled and then moved on.
Yeah. I don't know who started it. Well, in 1967 or whenever it started, but it's come back up again. And Takei, Shatner had gone to, something happened to Shatner, and he went on Twitter and talked about how, he hates working with everybody, and especially George Takei. And George Takei is currently in London rehearsing for his play Allegiance, which is going to debut on the West End. And he was being interviewed by The Guardian and talked about how everybody on the set of the original Star Trek had a great time working together, but nobody really liked Bill. It's basically his point that he's making.
That's some stuff to say now. So, so much.
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever Is that like been public knowledge before?
That people didn't like William Shatner.
Like
I think that's
like I know there's a lot of people who talk smack about William Shatner, but I guess I hadn't heard it like inter TOS crew. You know what I mean?
yeah. I think so. I think that there's, it's been a long time since TOS, so there's been various grievances that have been concealed or aired. But he said in the interview specifically that he didn't want to talk about Shatner, and then, of course, acknowledged the fact that he just did. But about how he basically blamed Shatner for just trying to, create publicity by stirring trouble amongst, the original members of the crew from TOS, and that he didn't feel like he needed to do that, and so he didn't really want to talk about Bill Shatner.
Yeah. He ended up because then he ended up calling him like, didn't he say he was like a cantankerous old man or something?
Yep.
So I was like,
said.
You just said he had knowledge doing it, but it was like, yeah, now there's, the article. You know what I mean?
That's true. I mean, that's enough red meat, I suppose, for Shatner to now say something else. But meanwhile, Walter Koenig is just, watching a little SUV, a little chamomile tea, and lights out. Right?
He's happy to be here.
I think he is. Of the surviving members of the original series crew, he's just like, you know what? I just like going to cons.
He of all of them, he should be the one to be like that, because he came in like later.
He's got to have
right?
some. Yeah, right. He's got to have that. As much as you could, an outsider perspective, I suppose, and not be so, because he's not really part of the whole spat between these two guys, which has gone on. Maybe the hate has kept them alive at this point, because of course they're the only ones left, and then.
Well,
Koenig is just there to be the witness.
The thing
to
is,
what's left.
They're different in a lot of ways, obviously. But George Takei and Shatner are the same in a lot of ways, in that they're old and seemingly like extremely wealthy, but all they do is post on Twitter all day.
Yeah,
and like with Shatner, it's like arguing with trolls and like, or like not even realizing, like working himself into an argument he's not in. And with George Takei, it's just like, Donald Trump, sir, you are a monster. And it's like, and like replying to random like 2-follower like middle-aged women who voted for Trump, and it's like, you don't have to be on here, like you don't have to talk to these people. Like what they both need to do with the internet and with each other is just like go enjoy the remaining years of their lives. But instead they're like, I know he was trying not to acknowledge it, but I know he wants to, because I think I see him just on Twitter all the time, and I'm like, oh my God, go away. Like,
yeah. The remaining crew of the Starship Enterprise are reply guys. Yeah. Except for Walter Koenig. I don't know about his Twitter
respect
him
him the most.
Maybe he's on there talking about vaccines. I don't know. I don't follow him. But I should, though. I'm going to follow him.
Yeah. Maybe I should see what he's saying.
Give him a follow. So anyway, that's what's happening in the world of Star Trek. But let's talk about the world of backtracking and get to our featured subject for this week's episode. From The Lady Vanishes to Strangers on a Train to Rear Window to North by Northwest to Vertigo, Alfred Hitchcock was undoubtedly the 20th century's master of urbane suspense. Throughout his career, his films almost invariably featured a tall, handsome, gabardine-clad hero pursuing a mysterious woman, unfailingly beautiful and blonde, through a web of intrigue and peril. But sometimes, even Hitch needs to take a vacation, so in 1955 he set up shop on the French Riviera to make a decidedly lighter film, which is partially about a reformed cat burglar, but is mostly about the beauty of Mediterranean France and of Grace Kelly, in that order. It's going to take all the skill and grace the cat has to catch a thief.
And this year's Academy Award winner, Grace Kelly. Two exciting personalities who were made for each other. And now Alfred Hitchcock brings them into very close contact in this perfect tale of romantic intrigue. filmed on the beautiful French Riviera.
We have a very strong grip, the kind a burglar needs.
That's why you came out here, isn't it?
The scandalous romance that shocked even the blasé international set between this restless, thrill-hunting American heiress and the notorious man of mystery the French underworld called the Cat. For the game they played was not played for money, and the characters they played with played for keeps. No one but Hitchcock could create such relentless excitement, filling the screen with fireworks as he matches the blazing talents of these two great stars in the love affair of the year.
Look, John. Hold them. Diamonds. Have you ever had a better offer in your whole life? One with everything.
Come down, Robbie, or we shall be forced to shoot.
You're right. Yeah, it is lighter, and I was kind of surprised by that, especially just because if you describe like if you describe like 3/4 of like what the movie is about, it does sound like it could be very serious, you know?
Yeah.
Like escape,
But it's not.
or he's not escape, but yeah, ex burglar. There's like former World War II soldiers and all this stuff, and you're just like, oh wow, like this is very intense. And then it's like, oh no, it's actually pretty fun, like the whole time.
Yeah, it's not at all really that. It's extremely light, and that was one of the reasons that it was not panned, but there was a mixed reaction to it on its release, because a lot of people are like, he really, like, Rear Window was his last film before this, like one of the greatest suspense films of all time, and people are like, it's too fun. What are you doing? You're supposed to be serious guy, you know. You're supposed to be. People are in peril. People are falling off of buildings and things like that. But apparently, he just wanted to make a kind of funner film. He literally did want to just go to the French Riviera and make a film there, and they did. And it is all on the screen. You know, this is the first of, I think, 5 films shot in VistaVision, which was Paramount's TM specific brand of widescreen filmmaking at the time. And it's all on the screen. This film won an Oscar for cinematography.
Oh,
and
it looks so good. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can just, it's just like, this is the era of, of travelogue filmmaking, basically, where it's either a advertisement for people who are looking to spend their vacation dollars, or it's for people who, can't afford to take a vacation, but they can see something like that in a movie. Something that I think would definitely be adopted by the James Bond series, which doesn't exist yet, but will in a little bit. A lot of people say that North by Northwest is kind of like a proto James Bond film and served as an inspiration in a lot of ways for that series. But I think that's already kind of starting here. I think that, Roby is a Bond sort of ish character. He's sort of morally gray, but ultimately a good guy. He's very skilled. He dresses in black and runs around on roofs. He's very rich, and he enjoys the finer things in life, and he's after a beautiful woman.
Or two.
Or two.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally didn't make that connection when watching it, but it almost does have that same kind of vibe, yeah. Yeah.
Keeping a cover that he strictly maintains, but nobody really believes. Yes, I work for Universal Exports. Okay, you're a spy. I'm gonna be trying to kill you later.
It is too, like, oh, the cops are here. They want to talk to you, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna have a big car chase.
Yeah, right. Yeah, or like, they're driving on a mountain road, and Grace Kelly's driving, and he's like, just drive a little faster. She's like, okay, and then whoa, too fast.
Yeah, I like those elements of espionage are in there a little bit too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It was Francis Truffaut who said, quote, "To Catch a Thief completely satisfies all of Hitchcock's fans, the snobbiest and the most ordinary, and still manages to be one of the most cynical films Hitchcock has ever made." And I found that to be a very interesting statement for a film that is very light in tone. The cynicism that he sort of identifies, I think, is interesting. I think that the film is not finger-waggingly cynical, but it is cynical about morality. Like, is it right to steal or not? Our hero is a guy who is a Robin Hood who just never gives the money back to the poor, but he definitely steals from the rich. A sidekick who is not a policeman. He is an officer for an insurance company. And like that, money is the real authority in this world. The police are never really involved other than just sort of bumbling around the edges. And then as soon as the police are involved, their solution is just, shoot him. Like we think we've got the cat up on a roof. They're like, just kill him. Yeah, go ahead. He hasn't even taken anything.
Just take him
just
out.
Shoot that guy. It's fine. Yeah. So I think there is, it's interesting that he would identify the kind of cynicism that would exist in a movie in the 50s like this.
Mm-hmm. There is sort of like it makes it all seem very like romantic though. So it's like it's like weirdly heartwarming often, I feel like.
Yeah, it does feel very romantic. And of course, at the center of that is Cary Grant's character of Roby, the cat, a cat burglar who has retired. Apparently, you can go to jail and maybe he hid the money really well because he's very well off in his villa on the French Riviera, but he is gone straight. And I love when another burglar who is doing crimes with his sort of signature motifs starts stealing in the Riviera. He gets the blame for it, and he goes to the restaurant where apparently all of his old crew works. And of course, they don't have any lines even, but they're all mad at him because he's bringing suspicion on them all. And I thought that was a really interesting sort of setup for the beginning of the film.
Yeah. Right away, that's when like I've become very like suspicious of like what's going on, and all these people like want to kill him. Basically, I'm like, oh,
you've got a whole cast of suspects. Yeah, there's I read before that the beginning of the film has some kind of wordless scenes. Like his first line is like the maid comes in and says like, "Oh, there's somebody here," and he says like, "Who is it?" And he doesn't talk until like another 15 minutes into the film because it's all him escaping on the bus, and then he gets to the restaurant and he makes contact with the waiter, with the stripe in his hair, and then he goes back into the kitchen and everybody's glowering at him, and somebody throws an egg at the window and he turns around to see who it is. And they had great stain continuity, I thought, because that egg stays there throughout the rest of the scene.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah.
But yeah, so it sets up this amongst like the beautiful vista of the French Riviera. It sets up there's like this dark underbelly that maybe you don't know about.
It does feel very grand too when they're introducing it. Like even when he's like, "Oh, the police are here. I got to get away." It's like, you get these big shots of the area, and like it kind of it's not like, oh, it goes on too long, but it kind of stays with it for a while, and like you said, there's like a lot of wordless scenes, so it does make like the whole thing feel big, I think.
Yeah, the French Riviera is a character in the film.
Sure,
as a lesser podcast might say.
Exactly.
Nowadays we're used to helicopter shots. We're used to drone shots and aerial photography, but in 1955, not so much. It's not so codified into the way that they make films. And so Hitchcock basically like said, "Can we get like, do we have like a mount to shoot helicopter shots of the boats, of the cars on the roadways?" And they're like, "I don't know." And they had to come up with this thing where they like took a door off a Sikorsky and a guy had to sort of like hang out the side while they captured these sort of aerial shots that you see in the film.
Well, it paid off. It shows. It does show.
We're introduced to a fun cast of characters, including, like I mentioned before, Grace Kelly's character, Frances Stevens. Her mother, played by Jessie Royce Landis, a character named Jessie Stevens. And you also have the young girl Danielle Fossard, played by Bridget Aubert, who, spoiler alert for the film, of course, turns out to be the new Cat. Did you, just looking at the characters that we meet, like, did you start thinking about like who the suspect could be, like who's really behind what's going on?
I did, just because, like, well, I didn't like totally like nail it, but I was very, like I said, very suspicious early on that, like, it's like, okay, you meet this guy and then you meet all his other friends and who are all want to kill him, and then like they don't, then you spend a lot of time with these other people once he like escapes or he goes there or whatever. And so I kept just thinking in the back of my mind, like, what are these guys? What, like, they're gonna get this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they tried to. I guess that's where it was like I didn't totally call it, because I didn't expect it, like the information he gets on like one of those guys trying to like kill him or whatever, like took me off guard, and I was like kind of surprised by that.
Yeah, I started to like halfway through the movie, I thought, okay, so we're heading to like a reveal here, and who could it be? And it's interesting because if this was, and we'll talk about the Star Trek, episode in a moment, but if this was a modern film, it would have been Grace Kelly, right? It would have been the woman that he's trying to romance kind of on the side, or seems a little too snoopy, and he's trying to keep her like off of his scent while he's looking for the real person. And then it turns out to be Grace Kelly. So not having seen this, I thought, oh, for sure it's Grace Kelly. And it turns out that it is this other character. And it makes sense when you look at the characters in the film, who's on the bill, who's got the most lines. Like at this point, it's like, yeah, it's going to be this one unresolved character who actually, we've seen kind of resents John Roby. So it all made sense, but I was still kind of surprised, because I was like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess it would be her. Plus, she thinks that he got his dad killed. So that comes late in the movie, but she's got a motive too.
Well, plus she's like, you do crime, right? And he's like, no. And she's like, oh, but wouldn't it be great to do crime?
Crime's awesome.
Oh,
yeah.
It's so beautiful. And
we could go anywhere and do crime. Yeah.
So when it happened, and then so like I didn't really expect it to go the way it did, but then when it was revealed to be her, I'm like, yes, she can't get enough crime. Like she
just loves the crime. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know if it was like a great like hide in plain sight thing, or if it's just the more sort of simplistic storytelling of an earlier film. But I do think that like Hitchcock was, so honestly, I don't think, I really do like this movie. It's very highly rated now, of course. But I don't think that Hitchcock worked too hard on this. I think this was kind of like a warm up or a blow off film for him. But he still does put little bits in there where you question what's really going on. Francis and Jesse, the Stevens, both seem to be exactly who they are, but Francis sure, speaking of like love and crime, like Francis sure seems to want the cat to keep stealing things. And Jessie almost seems like too friendly. Like she really doesn't care. She's got all this money. She doesn't care about it like this much. The only person that I never suspected was Hewson, the insurance guy. And there's even like a part where Roby, when he originally comes to the Carlton Hotel after he has to escape the restaurant, they take the boat. There's like a guy with no shirt on who's like doing pull-ups, and you're like, oh, this guy seems kind of athletic. Like maybe he could be an acrobat or the cat. Uh-huh. And that guy keeps showing up. He's even in the party at the end because Jesse asks him for bourbon, and you're like, okay, this guy's on the scene. And I kept thinking, yeah, definitely this guy whose name we don't know, who has no lines. This guy's definitely the cat. It's like, no, it's not. It's the girl. It is the girl.
So they just go, it's that guy.
Alfred Hitchcock had me all tied up in knots. Yeah.
Yeah, I never noticed that. I'm sorry.
Something that I really love about Hitchcock films, and I think that it definitely applies to this, is that he just knows, like, it's 106 minutes, and every scene is exactly as long as it needs to be. It contains everything that it needs to. Like, he knows how long things should take. Even in the modern day, when computers are essentially writing films, I feel like you'll get scenes that are just too long. You'll get something that happens, and I guess they felt like they set it up well, but you're like, wait a minute, is this guy that guy? And Hitchcock just, I don't know what his process was, but he must have just worked the scripts down and did the editing to the point where it's like, no, this is like exactly how long the scene should be. We move on to the next scene. Everybody knows where we are. And I just think that like his command of, what we see on screen just makes the movies just so enjoyable and attractive. Nothing outstays its welcome.
Yeah, it feels very natural. And especially because I felt like while there was like a lot of like build up and stuff going on, like I often just felt like the movie felt very like slice of life in a lot of ways, because they're just hanging out, they're doing a lot of talking on the beach, you know what I mean? They're on vacation. Yeah. And it somehow manages to do that without feeling like what's going on here, you know? You know what I mean? Like it keeps it very interesting. Yeah. And, like everything just the pacing feels really good the whole time.
Yeah, the pacing is excellent, and his movies are usually edited so cleanly as well. There's a lot of different sequences. Like for instance, there's the sequence where they're trying to get away from the cops, who, and neither of them are like admitting that they're getting away from cops, but that's basically what they're doing when they're in this car chase.
Yes,
and it's the exteriors are shot on the Riviera. But let's face it, like most of the car stuff with like Cary Grant and Grace Kelly, it's just shot in a studio, like in Burbank. It's shot on Paramount Studios, right?
Yeah.
It's all rear projection. And so they have to rear project the backgrounds and everything. And there's a sequence where there's like an old lady that walks out in front of them and they have to kind of slow down. And she drops a shirt or something. She's got her laundry. And then they pull away and then we see in the rear view, in the reverse, her going back and picking the shirt up and then the cop car kind of stopping. So they had to shoot all that on location, then come back and rear project it. And everything has to like cut together for continuity still. And even today in a film where you see somebody leave, and then we get to cut to the reverse and they're leaving again, like in a modern film, people not paying attention to the editing, like the editing like sells a lot of these wordless sequences.
I noticed like really good, like, in some of those rear projection scenes, like camera movement and stuff like that, it wasn't like fully static, and it made it like come more alive. Like, it didn't just feel like, even though it's very clear, it felt more than just like a static shot. Yeah. Like, oh, they're not really there,
Yeah, Hitchcock likes to move the camera around a lot. People think of like Rear Window, where you're just looking out of a window, or sort of vignetted figures through binoculars, a kind of static stationary thing, but he does like to move it around a lot. He had a lot of talent, I think, as a filmmaker, making a space, moving the camera around through a space and making it feel big and kind of alive.
No, it's cool because it kind of lined up with like the shots in the rear projection, it was kind of moving.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah,
that I feel like takes a lot of effort to nail that.
So then he does a movie on a train. It's like everybody's just in a bunch of boxes, but he still makes it look good. Yeah. This story is a fun story, and we all like the idea of like a roguish character, a thief, with a heart of gold. And specifically, I like the fact that they put a little patriotic twist on it too, because Cary Grant was born in England, but sort of moved to America to grow up. Actually, interestingly, Cary Grant was a touring performer and like an acrobat. And of course, his character in the movie talks about how he was, but it's sort of the reverse. In the movie and in the book, I believe he was an American who came to Europe to travel around. In this case, Cary Grant came to America. But also I like the fact that he's like, so I was like a thief. I was one of the best thieves, and me and my crew got pinched, and so we were in a jail. But then the Nazis blew up the jail, so then we joined the French resistance. And then I was like a Humphrey Bogart, like a Rick type figure, like fighting with the resistance. And at the end of the war, they're like, yeah, you're good. Go ahead. You're fine.
Right. I was like, that explains all the guys, right? Because if you go to jail for being a cat burglar, maybe you make a few friends in jail, but when you get out, you're not going to know a bunch of guys, you know, you're not going to have a crew that you're related to. So they had to think of like, okay, well, how are they all together? It's like, okay, well, they were also in World War II together. So this guy's both a burglar and fought in World War II, and they kind of smashed those two things together.
Yeah. And Houston asks him, like, how many people have you killed? He's like, 78 or whatever. And he's like, whoa. Yeah, it's an interesting backstory for the character. And then it also gives that kind of feel of like, I like a World War II or like a war heist film, like a Kelly's Heroes type thing. This is like the sequel to that, you know, or like the child of something like that.
Oh yeah,
like a Three Kings.
It reminded me of Oceans, just when it's like, he gets out.
Yeah, those guys were all, they were all in the war, sure.
But like, they didn't want to kill him.
Right, yeah. What if everybody hated Danny Ocean?
That would be pretty good, yeah.
To Catch a Thief, yeah. Yeah, there's a little bit of, I don't know if you get this so much in movies at the time, but there's a little bit of he's kind of an outsider, you know, he's kind of not exactly an ugly American. He's actually very cosmopolitan, you know, and continental foreign American, but there's a little bit of like he's kind of this outsider. And so maybe if he was native French, or if he, you know, knew everybody better, they wouldn't immediately think, well, this is definitely the guy. But part of his solitude and living in his, you know, villa and doing his own thing is what sort of recommends him to people when the cat strikes again. They're all like, well, obviously it's this guy. I mean, he's doing it.
They're like, you don't seem like American.
It doesn't matter how much he protests, you know, it's clearly got to be him. We're not doing it. We're just working in a kitchen here.
Yeah, it's almost like it could be nobody else.
Like a lot of films of the time, like a lot of Hitchcock films, the costumes are by Edith Head, and they are pretty great all around, culminating in, of course, the big masquerade ball scene at the end, which, speaking of Truffaut and his comment about cynicism, I think it's on display here. They're all doing, you know, Louis the 15th era type stuff. It's all the rich people who live on the Riviera. They're all in powdered wigs. And somebody, maybe not the cat, but somebody is here to rob these people blind.
Oh, yeah. That was an awesome part. And that was another one where I was kind of, it was just a little thing, but it did get me, like the whole costume bait and switch. It was a perfect like setup for that and everything too.
Yeah, if this was remade today, we would find maybe a different way to do that. The one bit of sort of racial insensitivity. He's not exactly in blackface, but he's sort of in the costume of like, you know, a Moorish servant. But if you're covering your face all up, then it makes it easy for you to swap out for another guy with a mustache.
Well, I don't know about like Jesse Stevens probably would have had that though. You know what I mean? So
I suppose that's true. She's our billionaire, so she's a good billionaire. Yeah.
Well, you know, I think honestly, if you did it, like there is even a chance you could catch some billionaires in blackface. The new version is part of it is they're not just stealing jewelry, they're stealing compromat on last year's party, and everybody's dressed up as Aunt Jemima or something like that. All these billionaires with their insensitive actions. You know, I noticed the Hitchcock cameo, so I felt smart.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Creepily, he's in a scene with some birds, but of course the birds wouldn't come out for another 7 or 8 years.
I do have to be honest, actually. I feel like I haven't seen as many of his movies as people, you know, applaud. Like, you know, I've seen like a lot of the big ones, and then, I don't know, it was cool. I'd never seen this movie. You know, I felt kind of like, do I know anything about Hitchcock? And then I watched it though, and I loved it.
Yeah, I hate to give it short shrift. Hopefully we've talked about it enough, but it is a lot sort of lighter and less thorny than some of his other films. But we'll have to circle back and talk about some of his other films in the future because, I mean, obviously he's an inspiration to many filmmakers and screenwriters and TV people. And so I would imagine that there are a lot of Star Trek episodes that in their own way refer back to Hitchcock. I do think it's kind of funny. Well, two things. One, where's the prequel series, right? Like, doesn't Paramount owns this still, I believe. I think almost all of Hitchcock's movies were made with Paramount. Later, he owned the rights to them, and then later his family sold them to Universal. But this is like the one that Paramount still retains. So I know you're watching Enterprise now. I'm sure at some point somebody will say, let's watch a movie like Catch a Thief or something like that for movie night.
No, that did happen. Oh man, they said it like in a different episode, I feel like.
Okay.
But yeah,
okay.
yeah, most certainly. I wonder like what's been the most recent like Hitchcock movie, like, you know, obviously that he didn't make, but like that's inspired by one of his movies that's come out. Was there like a Psycho movie or something?
Yeah. I feel like Psycho is Psycho is like obviously probably his most famous film, but it's not necessarily like what he's known for. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like a serial killer.
Right.
Stressing serial killer is not like his usual fare.
No, yeah. I was just thinking like, because you know how...
And it's a Robert Bloch joint, of course.
You know, it's like, okay, we're going to do a big It movie, Stephen King. And then, like, after that comes out, some people are like, well, I guess we should try to do Pet Sematary or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So I feel like
I don't know.
This is one of those that if they ever did, like, Vertigo remake, they'd be like, okay, maybe we'll see if they like To Catch a Thief.
In the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, we were lousy with husband is going to kill his wife, but the wife's going to kill him first. You know, these sort of like mid-budget thrillers. And they just don't make those anymore. Oh, Gone Girl. Yeah, that's kind of Hitchcockian in a way. Yeah. Or anything by David Fincher, maybe.
Yeah, true.
I don't really know. That's a good question. I got to think about that. But I do think that if Paramount owns the rights to this, where's the prequel series? If you can have a Pennyworth series, we can have a series where a young cat is doing burglary, right? And then in later seasons, he's pinched, and then he ends up fighting in World War II. And to make a thief. There's your title.
It'll be like the Alfred show would be called To Make a Thief, the story of the cat, aka
Paramount
Roby.
presents Alfred Hitchcock's To Make a Thief.
You gotta put Hitchcock
Cat
in the name
begins.
so people know for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, and I got it. In an alternate timeline where the USS Voyager was severely damaged by the Krenim in 2374, Torres wrongly remembered Clark Gable starring in To Catch a Thief, when it in fact had been Cary Grant. And Harry Kim believed the mistake came from the initials, CG. So that's where it was referenced.
What is that show?
It's one
What
of those,
is Star Trek Voyager? You know?
They're like, hey, it's Year of Hell. They're like, we're hanging out in the bar.
Sometimes I got to ask myself. People complain about how, you know, it didn't get gritty enough. But when you think about it, from day one, they were kind of fucked, right? They're writing themselves into a corner where it's like, well, there'll never be Klingons. There'll never be, there's no Romulans. We just have to make up a bunch of stuff every single week. And it's just like, what if The Office, you know, The Office, like The Office, right?
Yeah.
What if The Office took place in the office and no one could ever leave the office? So there's no people going somewhere else. There's no, doing a marathon or going to a spaghetti restaurant. They're just always in the office. That's kind of like Voyager.
This just made me want to see The Office in space.
Well, that's probably the Orville, right?
Oh, yeah. They should make a
I don't
Star
know.
Trek
I'll have to
one.
watch the Orville someday. Yeah. Yeah, they should make a Star Trek Orville. The other thing I wanted to mention just really fast is he probably never would have gone for it because he has to do everything his way. That's why he's Hitchcock. And of course, the Broccoli's, the people that own James Bond, are the exact same way. But I kind of wish that we had gotten a Hitchcock James Bond.
Oh, that would be tight. Yeah. I think that's that wouldn't like you said, that wouldn't have that would not have jived them, because I feel like they had, it's, to me at least, I feel like even though they do match, I feel like the first run of James Bond movies kind of have a similar sort of vibe to them.
Yeah.
Until they
From Russia with Love is probably the closest that you get. Like that's
Yeah.
it's on a train. Yeah, it's very Hitchcockian, but yeah, I think he would have been good.
Yeah, I feel like just like if like they just he wouldn't have been able to go there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
He would have wanted to do his own thing. The Bond girl in From Russia with Love is blonde, so that would have worked out okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to see that now though. Oh, it's too bad.
I want to go to that alternate timeline with Bill Torres where that exists. But unfortunately, we're stuck in this timeline and we have to take a time out for a word from our sponsors. We'll be back with more backtracking.
Hi, I'm Mikan Hana.
And I'm Caliban.
And we're the hosts of the Sailor Noob podcast. I'm the expert.
And I'm the noob.
You're talking into the wrong end of the microphone.
Aye, aye.
Okay, every week we watch a new episode of Sailor Moon and learn about monsters, fashion, food, culture, and of course, the sailor warrior of love and justice, Sailor Moon.
All right, now, what is her rank? Is she an admiral or a rear admiral?
Okay, shh. The ad's almost over. We're a couple of magical people, and every week we Moon Prism Power make up a new episode.
Steady as she goes.
Please stop that. Sailor Noob is available every Friday on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Shiver me timbers. All right, we're back, and it's time to talk about the Trek side of this equation. As a fake destination in a fictional setting, the planet Risa has captured the imagination of Star Trek fans throughout the years. A world of eternal sunny and tropical delights with breezy moonlit nights, friendly natives, couples, pottery classes, and then there's this Gemma Harone everybody keeps talking about. Whatever the century and the conflicts that it holds, Risa has remained a warm and safe harbor for the peoples of the Alpha Quadrant. But they're about to get a shuttlecraft full of ugly Earthlings when the NX-01 arrives for 2 days and 2 nights.
On the next episode of Enterprise.
I've never been much for vacations, but I've got a little villa overlooking the ocean, and Porthos and I are going to relax.
Would you join us for a drink?
We've been waiting for you to ask.
I'm Jonathan.
Kayla.
Give me a couple hours, I could have you navigating a starship.
Why don't you start by telling me about some of the places you've been? We'll get to the starship navigation later.
You were willing to follow 2 strange aliens into a basement. Gorgeous aliens. Don't forget, they were gorgeous.
You're wrong, Jonathan. You're all wrong.
Enterprise. The future is closer than you think.
I think it's hilarious and so American and so early 2000s and so Star Trek that the Enterprise comes to Risa, and it isn't about how they think they own everything and they're basically ruining everybody's good time. It's just more about, God, look at all the stuff that's happening to us when we're trying to go here. There's not a hint of self-awareness in the fact that they are basically, you know, representatives of Earth and humanity who are just coming here and causing all this trouble on this planet where everybody just wants to have a nice Eggs Benedict and go out and do some paddle boating, maybe a little group orgy, and then go home.
Well, yeah. I mean, for some of them, nothing really happened, so that's kind of good.
Yeah, let's talk about that. We have a couple different storylines going on. And let's dive into Hoshi's first. Part of me is like, thank God that Hoshi didn't get involved in some like offensive kind of storyline or something. Hers is like the least eventful, but at the same time, it's also like, it's like the least eventful. Like literally nothing happens. It's very Hoshi, I think, to go to this planet and go, oh my God, this is great. This is a planet where all these different races like to come here. I can just, with no plan, I can just go out and talk to people and try to pick up new languages. And then her plans change because she meets, you know, the sexy romantic alien guy. And they, you know, spend a fun 2 days together. And then she's like, yep, I had a good time. And like, but that's not TV though. That's not, there's no conflict there. Like, what's the conflict? I'm
not going to lie. I kind of dug it. I know it's like, I feel like there are like 4 storylines in it, so like it just doesn't get to like there probably is another beat there that's missing, but I don't know, I kind of found it charming watching it. Like I actually wished everyone's storyline was more uneventful. Like I'm not saying I want Star Trek to be like that, but I was like I think like an episode where they're just kind of hanging out like once a series is kind of fun.
Hanging out would have been fine, but I was complaining about how nothing happens in her storyline. They perpetrate that things are happening in the other storylines, but nothing's really happening in those either. Like, it is kind of a hangout. Mm-hmm. The part of it that's supposed to kind of connect to Catch a Thief, and as we said before, this is real thin, even though this is Word of God, is the Archer part where he meets a mysterious lady. In this case, she is the cat. She is the lady who has an ulterior motive. But nothing comes out of it. He literally doesn't even tell anybody that he was roofied by, an agent of a foreign power. Jesus Christ. The Trip and Malcolm Night at the Roxbury scene just ends with them looking ridiculous, and they come home. Mm-hmm. And there's the part with where Mayweather like breaks his leg, and maybe there's a medical problem, and it's just a chance for John Billingsley to act like a goof. And then that all works out too. So like, what the hell?
Yeah, but that one actually,
it is just a hangout
has
episode.
Some like that last one has some sort of a story arc, sort of, I guess.
Yeah, I guess we learned that apparently Phlox's species hibernate instead of sleep for like a week or something.
I did like that them getting like captured or whatever. Like it's pretty low stakes.
It's extremely low. The stakes are underground.
I wish that the Archer thing felt lower stakes than that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I think that idea is what kills it slightly for me, is that, like you said, he is like drugged or whatever by this foreign agent, and then it's just like he's just sort of like, well, okay, like, go back to the ship, not gonna tell anyone. Like, that seems like a bigger deal.
It would be like if somebody roofied James Bond, and then he just woke up the next day and he's like, all right, well, off to MI6. Like, there's just nothing really comes out of it. The race that she is from is the race from the episode, I think it's called Detained. It's the one where Archer he gets put in like space Guantanamo Bay, and then Dean Stockwell's in that one. And so they're like a race of people that are very paranoid because they've had run-ins with the Suliban, who are, the big bad guys in the first season. And they don't ever really come back. She doesn't ever come back. It doesn't set anything up. Like, I'm all for a low-key episode, but, put a couple bricks down for the upcoming wall.
Yeah. Yeah, I did think, like, especially since they brought it up here, like, also, like, bringing back that detention camp and stuff could have been, or, like, that alien race, could have been good, like, for the story, but,
Yeah, it's a little disappointing in that regard, but it is attempting to keep the tension of the overarching plot of this season going.
It's like so close. It's like right before the end.
Yeah, it's like the second to last episode. Yeah.
So it's both, like, to me, that's why I like, to Take Me Out to the Holodeck or whatever, where it's like we're taking a break in the middle of this big thing. It's actually coming right at the end of, like, the season premiere or whatever, and like we're all fired up. It's sort of. I think there's one episode, and then like, okay, now let's take a breather, and then we'll get on with the season. Whereas like this is like you're right before the end, which they do sometimes, and it's like it feels like, okay, this is like a dip, but then in the very same episode they have to like ratchet up the tension. And it's kind of weird. Like that it should be one or the other, I feel like.
Yeah, this is right before the season finale, like you said, and it's right before they mention, or she mentions, I can't remember the character's name now, but she mentions to Archer, like, where are the Suliban's helixes? Like, where do they live? And this is right before the season finale is the episode where they accidentally like blow up that planet. Remember, like they're going to land on a colony planet, and they ignite the atmosphere and like kill everybody. And so the Enterprise gets called back, and then he meets Daniels back from the future, and so we kind of continue the temporal Cold War thing. So I don't know, like they're still experimenting with the long form. Yeah, I suppose. Well, have the last episode be, I don't think, immediately canceled if this is the last episode of the finale of the first season.
Yeah.
But they're still toying with the serialized storytelling at this point, and it's clear that they don't have quite the hold on it that they should. And the Suliban in general are, I don't know, they're kind of unsatisfying as a ultimate villain, but whatever. You get to see a weird looking dog hang out with Porthos. That's fun.
Yeah. I can't ever totally place my finger on how I feel about them. Like watching it recently, there was a couple episodes involving them that I particularly like, but it's not like one where I find them very memorable or like, oh, they should like explore this again. But maybe, I don't know, maybe I missed something,
Yeah, and so much of it is leveraged on the involvement of the shadowy figure, from the future, which is never resolved. So, apparently, if you guys can't keep track of your own story, I don't know how you expect me to make do.
Right? Yeah. I think I'm more interested by the shadowy figure from the future than them.
Yeah, right. This episode is directed by Michael Dorn. I don't know if you knew that.
No, actually, I usually, because every episode of Enterprise is directed by like Robert Duncan McNeil or somebody.
Yeah, or Roxanne Dawson. Yeah,
Roxanne Dawson comes up a lot. And so I do like we do the thing where we point at the name of the person when their name comes on the screen. They go like, oh yeah, Jonathan Frakes or LeVar Burton. But I must have been looking away, grabbing my dinner or something. I didn't catch that.
So it's an example, once again, of him being involved in a Ryza-related episode, this time behind the camera.
Not his greatest contribution to Ryza, but...
No, for sure. But yeah, the rain doesn't fall in this episode. Let's talk about the idea of two heterosexual male crewmen making their entire let's talk about the sex planet of Ryza in general.
Okay.
And how they had an opportunity to have two sailors on leave who are, they're in a port and they're looking for action. They had an opportunity to subvert that narrative in an interesting way that has commentary and not just they get rolled by some girls who turn out to not be girls. Whoa. I felt like that was, I know it's 2002, it's 2003, but it's like, I felt like they could have done better than that.
Yeah. To be fair, not to be fair, but it almost was like, okay, it's like a little dumb, but like they seem like they're having fun. I think it comes on like there's that one line where they're like, that's what really soured it for me, was when they're like, they say, I don't think she's the right pronoun, and he's like, well, if you want to take your chances, and I'm like, you know what, if they had released it today and they just cut that last line off of it, like, yeah, I feel like people would be a little more accepting of it, because it's not necessarily bad.
It's not. Yeah, that's not great, and I don't really expect anything from them in that time period when the show was made in that regard. But it's more just the fact that they're just like two like horny hound dogs, and how the show. Yeah, I know that they get tied up in a basement, but the show isn't asking us to question that behavior, and the show isn't really judging them for that, and. And I know that like this is humanity in like the 22nd century, right? So maybe they're not as evolved as a guy who puts on a swim trunks and just reads a book with his horgone showing all day. But it's so humans are not necessarily more evolved, but they don't. We're told that Ryza is this, amazing place where people leave their hangups behind, and that's cool, and it's really sex positive. And these guys would totally harsh a sex positive environment. Do you know what I mean? These are like the two horny, middle-aged dads who stumble into an orgy and are just ruining the vibe for everybody. And the show never really explores or examines that. In fact, they are taken advantage of because two people rob them, and leave them tied up. And it never really, everything that they do, we're supposed to be like, oh, those boys. Like, we're not supposed to see what they're doing as being gross. When they're going down to the planet, Malcolm's like, the women are very cosmopolitan. And it's like, Malcolm, you're a weirdo. I think we've always known this about you, but you just like confirmed for us. I wouldn't want to take a long shuttle ride with Malcolm anywhere.
That's a pretty good line, I think. Cosmopolitan.
Yeah, I guess.
I actually think there should have been no hijinks with them. I think they should have just gotten
just gotten laid and that's it. Back to the ship.
Well, I think maybe because I thought like it was only really that
they're
one.
Just so weird about it. Like they're standing in the corner and they're like, oh, what about her? What about her? And they finally get two women to talk to them who have obviously, pegged them as marks. And they're lying about being the captain and stuff like that. And it's like, this is really how you guys behave when you're on leave?
Yeah, because I think it's like, I think they're obviously playing it up as much as they can for comedy. But I feel like I think of when they go to, it's a little cheesy, but I think of like in the Justice where they're going to kill Wesley or whatever. They show up on that planet and everyone, I think that's what's cool about it is like everyone's like, hey, nice, getting laid is cool. Like I think that is cool that they're like,
no, that is cool, but that's not how these guys are acting. In Justice, and remember, Justice is like a lot of input from Roddenberry. He's still around for a season of TNG, so they're kind of weird about sex too. But like they're a little more, early TNG is a little more, no, I orgy all the time. I love the orgy. It's great. And that's all fine. And then when they get to the Justice planet, the Justice people are too sexy for them, like as enlightened sex people who will wear perfume and, if they're on the lady planet. Mm-hmm. Even our crew is like, wow, these guys are really sexed up. And so we have a little perspective. This is just like if you took like the three naveled green ladies away, these are just two assholes in a bar that you wouldn't want to talk to. Do you know what I mean? And I just think that's okay. It's okay for characters to act like assholes, but hopefully the show is trying to say something about it. But I think that like Mike Sussman and Brandon Braga are just like, oh, it's going to be awesome. And then they're going to be like, should we have them do the head thing? Like the SNL guys? No, that's too much. That's too much. Like they're not really trying to say anything with how goobery these guys are acting.
Yeah.
I would like to believe that Tripp, is a little more respectful than he's acting, but I don't know. Maybe not.
I think there's our perception on how to be funny and horny at the same time has changed over the years. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I don't know if Star Trek has ever had a recognizably normal opinion about how to be horny and funny at the same time.
I also brought myself, I was thinking of like, what are all the fun, horny times in Star Trek? And I thought about how like when Dax and Kira are like got the hollow hunky dudes, and I'm like, yeah, she's having fun. She's just like, yeah, look at these hot guys,
That's true, and it's based both in their characters in the world, in that this is 90s TV, so there's only so far they can go. But Dax is basically like, fuck one of the hollow guys, go for it. Mm-hmm. But Dax is that kind of person. And Kira is not that kind of person. She's religious. Yeah. She's a little pent up. And it has nothing we understand in their society. You fuck the hollow guys. That's like, we all do that. That's fine. That's not a big deal. But maybe it is. I don't know what conversation, what dialogue would have helped me. Maybe they are coming from an Earth in the 22nd century where Hooters still exists. Oh no, the Zindi destroyed the Hooters when they blew up Florida. Where they're still weird about sex enough that they have to come to this planet and be like, oh, we can get some sex here for sure. Like, it's just like it's like a Porky's or something like that. I didn't expect Porky's in my Star Trek.
I think maybe they needed to change the gender balance of it, because it's like those two guys
you need more girls on the Enterprise then.
Right. Because those two guys get all jacked up and horny in like the most, like beer commercial way. And then like, because like Hoshi gets slayed too, but it's like in the most like romance story kind of way.
There you go.
You know what I mean? But I think
Malcolm, okay, save the character of Malcolm for me and make him not a sex weirdo. And then Malcolm's like, I just want to read my weapons books. I got a new grenade novel, whatever he does in his spare time. Then he meets a lady he doesn't expect, and he has a transformative experience and then regrets having to leave to go back to the ship. Whereas Trip and Hoshi are like, oh, we're turning this town upside down, and they're the weird, horny ones.
Yeah, because, I mean, yeah, I don't know, because I think part of the original DNA of Ryza is they give Picard the statue, and it's like, yeah, you go here sometimes to get laid. Like, so I think it's okay to have some characters be like, I want to go, like, hey, it'll be fun to go get laid there, No,
and yeah, right, but like, yeah. No, I agree. I'm trying to think about the best way to lay this out, because I feel like I still haven't really done it well. They have a society that we know, both the Federation and just, I guess, the galactic sexual temperature is high. It's cool to have sex and do whatever. But the way that the characters act when they're in that environment tells us something about them, right? So like this is, I think, one of the reasons that you never see like recreational drugs on the show. I would imagine in the future they could make recreational drugs safe. There isn't, Tide, cut into it or whatever. Like, they're safe. You can use them. They last for a little while. Then you're done. You go back and go to your job or do whatever, But we never see that because in modern America, we just can't get over the war on drugs, even though it's technically over. It is not over. And so we don't see that on screen. Whereas sexual mores have definitely changed in the 60 years that Star Trek started. And so we see the characters, I think, accept that more. But you'll still have an episode where they go to Ryza and Quark has got like 6 Horgons. He's got a Horgon stuffed down his pants. He's got one strapped to his head. And he's like, yeah, all right, let's do this. And you're like, dude, that's not, you're like, you're double dipping in the chip here. Just be cool. Be cool about the fact that we can that we can have as much sex as we want. It tells us something about the characters. And like these two bozos, they're going total beer commercial. And nobody nobody goes to them and is like, nobody either goes, hey, you want to tone it down? Or goes, we got 2 beer commercials. All right, come on guys, let's do this thing. Because when Worf is like that in his episode in DS9, the Ryzians are like, okay, fine, we got one of those. That's fine. Yeah, come on, get some drama of our own. That's fine.
Right, yeah. They actually should have been like, hey, come to this room. And it's like the ultra horny room. And it like they start playing like, I love twins or whatever,
Right, yeah.
Like they should have a spot for them.
That's you go to the wet t-shirt room or whatever.
Well,
maybe they're not this is 200 years in Ryza's past too, so maybe they haven't developed the right sexual technology to handle this kind of customer.
It feels a little out of character to like it's I think it's one of those things where it's like it's the first season and like maybe the characters aren't fully formed, but I feel like all the Malcolm episodes are about how he's like kind of closed off and like he's not that sociable, and then all of a sudden now he's going to this planet and he's like, let's do it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that's totally consistent character-wise, though. I feel like I know a couple people that are, they're sort of insular, they don't relate well to others, but in the right situation, they're like,
yeah, but I feel like they wouldn't. Maybe. But
I don't want that to be a hero of a Star Trek show.
I'm okay with. You can get away with an Enterprise. Like they're still a little weird,
Yeah, I guess that's it's Enterprise. I guess that covers up a lot of sins.
Yeah.
You know what doesn't cover up? Here's a sin that needs to be covered up. We get it. Okay, I don't know the evolution of the employment of the Horgon in their culture, but like at this point we've got it. Like they put the Horgon on everything. There's like a Horgon light switch in Archer's room. There's a Horgon mezuzah. Like the Horgon is on everything at this point. We understand. It's fine.
It's just it's
branding. Maybe Risa they were big on branding in the early days, and later on they're like, it's more of an exclusive thing.
Yeah, that's true. Well, maybe they, I don't know, they chilled out over time, or like as society progressed, they realized like branding isn't that important, you know?
Yeah. Or it's just more like the Playboy Club. There's probably a lot of Playboy merchandise now, but if you can get like a classic, a lighter, a Zippo lighter, you know, from the 60s Playboy Club, it's like, it's more exclusive. I have a classic style Horgon. They don't make them like this anymore. Not replicated, hand carved.
Vintage.
See, I would have been fine if if the thing had progressed with like when Hoshi meets that couple, you know, the couple of townies, and they're like, you know, if they'd hit a point where they're like, hey, we're going to this thing. Are you open to new experiences? And like something happens there. Do you know what I mean? You must live on Risa for a reason. As long as it develops organically. But yeah, these two horn dogs barking at the moon. I don't know.
I did think like it. I think is it intentional? Like when they introduced that guy she gets with, like, does it seem suspicious at first?
It does. Yeah.
But it's
another kind of fake out. Yeah.
Why would that? I guess that is kind of a cool fake out, to be honest. Like, I just did not. It caught me off guard completely.
That was, yeah. They're like, here's the twist. No twist.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. Like, she just kind of had a good time.
I guess that works.
It worked for me.
I don't think of anything else. Yeah.
Oh, the most it reminded me of To Catch a Thief was just like, there's a part where like they're looking in the telescope and they're just kind of chatting, and just some of the, like, this is very minor, but just some of the like the dialogue and sort of the tone matched the movie a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's kind of grasping at straws, but
they have 3 conversations before there's even a hint that there is something there. Do you know? Like if this is a real Hitchcock thing, he's looking through his telescope and he sees her like getting rid of a body or something like that. You know what I mean? Or like looking in a Pulp Fiction case. And then he's like, wait a minute, you know, what's she here for? And then they have a couple of interactions that have subtext to them because he's trying to find out more about her. But instead he's just like, well, I'm Archer and I'm boring and I got my dog. And she's like, she comes over and she's like, you can't be really this boring. No, I really am this boring. I had some seafood today, you know, and then finally, like he starts to suspect because she asks too many questions, and he scans her, and it's like, okay, I guess now we're heading somewhere.
Feels like an accident that they get there. Well, it is an accident, but you know what I mean? Like, it's just, you're like, oh, okay, this is happening now. Like I thought
she's a Tendarin.
I think with all the storylines, well, not all of them, but like a few of them, it's going on for long enough where you do for a moment wonder, like, there's something about to happen, right? And it doesn't really get there.
Not a great feeling. Kind of the opposite of the movie that we saw.
Well, like a big twist, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
The biggest twist is like, oh, they're alien guys and not hot ladies.
Uh-oh. I want to talk about, and they're not here to play. What if they were just guys, but they're also like, yeah, let's do it. I want to talk about Travis really fast. Travis sucks, and I hate it because, you know, Anthony Montgomery is so cool and like has so much personality, and it's almost like they just went, nope, you're boring, you're Travis, you don't ever do anything cool. And I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking that, like, remember the character of, oh man, I can't remember the character's name now, but in the movie Galaxy Quest, the helmsman is like a precociously young kid,
yeah.
But he's like an expert pilot. And I was like, oh, good making fun of Star Trek. No, Galaxy Quest came before Enterprise. It's almost like Enterprise saw Galaxy Quest and went, well, it's a good idea for a character, not realizing that is a parody of the type of character that you created with Travis Mayweather.
Yeah, I guess he's one where you like it doesn't I don't think about it often because like it's either like there's like one episode about him and then like he's just kind of there usually, you know. So I haven't even thought about it that much. It just strikes me as
I like the episodes that are about him when we go to like the horizon and the idea that like his family is like, oh, wow, you guys are explorers. We've only been like, you know, out here in space for 30 years on our ship. But you got to do something with that character. Like, how does joining Starfleet and doing what they do change him, you know, in his perspective? And they never get around to it. Maybe if there was a 5th season, they would have got there.
I think almost every Star Trek has like one of those characters. So maybe not to that extent, but I feel like there's just always some character where they're like, we just don't have the thing we want to talk about with them. You know, they don't like them for whatever reason.
It's a little frustrating, but you know, it's Enterprise. I've said before in the past that I think that for all of its faults, I think that Enterprise as a Star Trek show has one of the best and like most consistent first seasons of any Star Trek show. People always talk about how, well, Star Trek shows always bad in the first season. And I'm not saying it's the best first season, but I think that the best episodes, but I think it's probably one of the most solid first seasons. Knowing how to do a Star Trek is not a problem at this point for the production. They know exactly what they're doing and they can pull it off too well. Part of the problem might be that the plots are starting to feel a little too rote and they're putting an A, B, and C story in and not thinking about how they should be unique to Enterprise. But I do like the first season of Enterprise. I think it's a really good season. And, you know, when you get to the end, they're trying out new things. And I just think that this is one that a swing and a miss.
Yeah. Like I said, I think I liked it just conceptually so much that I found myself like at times being kind of charmed by it, but with a lot of caveats. And, I don't know. At the same time, I like that it was trying something different, but that is the best thing I can say about the first season too, is that like if you're a fan of Star Trek, it is very familiar and you just kind of can get into it right away. And you just kind of wonder, like, at first it's like, okay, but it honestly offers like some ideas of like what are new things we can explore and like what's different too. So I think it does a good job of that, while the show doesn't ever fully reach its full potential, I don't think.
Yeah. And I can't even imagine just how much pressure everybody involved must have felt at that point. I think that they were already aware that, you know, maybe the flame of Trek was dimming and cooling a little bit, and you've got this series that's so esoteric, and you could just watch it. Like, I guess you don't need to know everything about the history of Star Trek to enjoy it, but it's kind of deep into the show's lore and you're already kind of committed to it. And they knew that, and they tried to course correct, you know, in the 3rd and 4th season, but who knows? But hey, you know, we got so many Star Trek shows, so many reboots. Apparently,
yeah.
Terry Matalas had said Picard season 3 is not only going to be an homage to TNG, but to Voyager as well. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how that's going to work.
Harry Kim.
I was going to say, I'll believe it when I see Tuvok, but we'll get there when we get there. So let's talk about the technology of Star Trek. It is a tool that solves the problems the characters are facing. Just as often, it's the actual complication that they're dealing with. So on every show, we randomly pick from a list of Star Trek technologies. We add what we get to the non-Trek media. We subtract it from the Trek episode to see how each is different. We call this our technological exchange. And here is the list of technologies that we work off of. It is phasers, holodecks, tricorders, transporters, warp drives, replicators, communicators, shields, advanced medical technology, and androids. And if I roll on my random number selecting technology, I get the number 4. If transporters God damn it, did not exist, or it did exist, excuse me, in the world of To Catch a Thief, how would things be different?
Well, there's all types of burglaries you can do with a transporter. That's for sure.
That's true. That's true.
Then it really is like not that impressive what he does, you know?
Well, let's see. Maybe it's not something that everybody has. Like the
it's like an Enterprise
exists.
where it's like there's only like one and we don't want to use
we'll
it.
Get there. We will get there. It's the thief. The cat has it, and people are aware of it. You know, like a glass cutter, like suction cups for your elbows and knees. It's like a part of the thief's toolkit, but it isn't something that just, you know, they don't have one in the lobby of the Ritz-Carlton.
Well, there's other security measures that people will have to also develop to keep transporter thieves out of their homes, you know? Otherwise, you can just pop right in.
Yeah, for a movie about a burglar and a thief, there are surprisingly little anti-thief measures. He doesn't ever have to cut the wire on a burglar alarm, you know, or do a flip over a laser beam or anything like that. Like, none of these people are guarding any of their jewels.
Well, we
it
get
really
the
is
idea.
a victimless crime.
They just tell us. We never see him in the room, really.
No, but I mean, I'm just saying, usually, like, those are the things that we like about thieving films, you know, like a Mission Impossible. Tom Cruise is hanging from the ceiling. They're doing a heist type film. And he's working to clear his name because the gendarmerie will take him away to the Bastille eventually if we don't catch this guy. But he's working for an insurance company. Like, this is all about like capital. The rich people, sure, they don't like losing things, but they're going to be reimbursed by the company, so they don't really care. When we see Jesse Stevens' stuff taken, she's like, it's kind of exciting that it was taken. So, like, literally nobody cares. Like, this is totally a victimless crime.
yeah, it's totally for the company. Maybe, I mean, I think that's why it also, to me, felt like more of a hangout. It's because it's not like a heist movie. We're not seeing heists occur. Like, we just see him tiptoeing on the roof, and we go, okay,
yep.
He did the thief, you know, like,
yep.
Let's get to the hanging out parts.
Yeah. That's the sort of James Bond element for me, although, you know, they've got the gadgets and stuff in a James Bond film, but there are also the parts where, how many other series does the hero eat dinner with the villain? You know, not a lot of other movies where they're just sitting down for a little nosh and they'll talk about their plans, playing
cards.
Yeah, right. Yeah, getting them across the table from each other.
I want to see Bond play some board games with the enemy.
Actually, in Never Say Never Again, the Sony remake of Thunderball, they play a video game. He plays a video game with the main bad guy.
Oh, is it like Pong or something?
No, it's kind of like
Strategemo.
It's like Strategema. Yeah, it's like a thermonuclear war type game where you have to bomb, you know, missile defense type thing. And it
That's
shocks
awesome.
you if you lose it electrocutes you.
They should bring that back, but it's like League of Legends or something.
Yeah, would Bond be a League of Legends guy, or he'd be a Call of Duty guy?
Yeah, Q is the League of Legends guy.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. It's like, I'll take you on in Overwatch.
Bond plays Fortnite.
I'm surprised James Bond hasn't been in Fortnite. Actually, he probably was already.
Probably, yeah.
So I don't know. The cat can beam in and out of places. I don't know. Whatever. Let's take transporters away from Enterprise. Oh, they weren't there. Okay, so the episode's exactly the same.
But what was the last episode to feature a transporter?
So the very first episode features the transporter. So Archer dies in a Suliban pod, and that's the end.
Yeah. Okay. So Captain Archer, he can't go to Risa.
So so here's a question. Yeah, we've got our answer. Now here's an existential question about Enterprise. Captain Archer is killed. Trip as the XO. No, who is the XO? It's T'Pol. Okay, fuck it. So T'Pol takes over provisionally. Immediately, Admiral Forrest calls the Enterprise back to Earth, right? They're not going to go on with a Vulcan at the head of this thing.
No, and there's a lot that also with T'Pol, like, there was a lot of storylines, a lot of opportunities she would have left, so I feel like
the mission's over at that point. Or maybe, because it's a brand new engine. I mean, Trip has to be in engineering. I don't know, maybe like Malcolm or somebody else could assume command and the mission could continue in Archer's honor. But yeah, I mean, like if we lost, I know Archer's, his life's always on the line, but if we lose him at any point, we've literally seen, that's funny because we've literally seen how disposable Captain Picard is. He's literally died a couple times and somebody else has just taken command of the Enterprise. But at this point, if we lose Archer, it's like the mission's kind of over. We go back home.
So this is like the fate of the Federation lies in these transporters.
Rests on this water polo loving goofball. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that fits for the show. Like there's so many opportunities where it's like they could get cut off, and like this could be it. And I think that's part of the, it's not really gonna happen, but I think it's part of the show, and it's like an exciting part of the show.
I wonder then if Enterprise's big failing, in the same way that like Voyager never really leaned into its premise of scarcity, if the big failing of Enterprise was then not emphasize enough that the sort of desperation of getting out there, which is antithetical to Star Trek in general, which is we are enlightened, we're boldly going, it's exciting to be out here. They do at sometimes they talk about how we're new out here and there's a lot of scary things and we don't know what's going on. But generally you would pick up in an episode and Archer's having some pudding or something, and it's never really like the threat isn't really there. And if they had really increased that idea of, well, we really don't know what we're getting into and we're finding weird things and everybody hates us when they see us coming. If you had sort of made it feel a little darker, maybe it would have been more distinct than just, Trek. But like I said before, I think at this point, it's a bug and a feature. We're all bored of Trek, but this is the brand. Like this is the show that we're trying to make. It's something that I think the new shows are running into, if they are not just constantly quoting and referencing older shows. They want to do darker things, but yet they're, we are Starfleet. They're still doing the exact same song because that's just what Star Trek is for people.
Yeah. I mean, I would like, there are a couple times where I feel like they hit that, and it does feel like, because there's been episodes where I see them in a...
Yeah, but when they do, it's Archer's making out with a slug or something like that on the rogue planet.
Like sometimes they'll be in a situation where it's like I feel like I've seen a crew encounter a similar situation, but they feel so much more vulnerable. Like it seems way scarier.
Yeah.
But like it doesn't always, like it's similar to Voyager, like you said, where it doesn't always feel that way. Sometimes it's like, oh, like this isn't gonna happen. You know what I mean? Like you kind of feel all the beats coming.
Yeah, but also, it's the idea of space. Like space is scary, and when you do a contemporary that is like early 21st century space show, there's going to be a point where there's a hole in the ship and they have to, plug the hole or something, or we're going to run out of power, we'll all freeze. And that's kind of that's one of the ways that you generate drama and tension in a space story. But Star Trek is Star Trek. So we're walking around in jumpsuits that aren't that expensive. We've got gravity. We fire phasers or like maybe rockets or phase cannons. That's what you want. And so they would never do that. But there's a couple episodes where you get that. Like Shuttlecraft 1's a pretty good episode. Mm-hmm. The episode where is it Malcolm? I can't remember which character, but Malcolm is like pinned to the hull by like a Romulan torpedo and they have to go outside and like that kind of tension is really interesting and cool. And it's not something that you would have, ironically, you do. There's an episode of Discovery where Admiral What's-Her-Name gets blown up because there's a torpedo in the ship. But anyway, I digress. You wouldn't have that because Geordi would just beam Malcolm out of there, to safety, or they just, use a warp bubble to pop the thing off. And so the sort of frontier space mechanics can make it interesting, but the show keeps saying, no, it's fun. They, watch movies and play water polo. And it's like, all right.
Yeah. And it's like on the fence a little bit. It needs to like go a little bit further into it.
That's why we have Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
They had gravity. They had gravity in that too.
Yeah, they went for it.
Ships don't have gravity. That's not how anything works. All right. Well, I think that we solved our technological conundrum there. Let's tell people what's coming up on the next episode of Backtrekking.
Well, so on the next episode, we've kind of been hinting at it, or it's said we've told you about it for a while, but we're finally hitting our Assassin's Creed episode, and we're gonna compare. There's a certain element about the series that I think connects thematically to the Assassin's Creed series, believe it or not.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about that along with a good example of it in the Voyager episode concerning flight.
Yes. We don't want to give too much away. Just trust us and show up to hear us.
I was like, really?
In 2 weeks, come back around and we'll pay off this crazy gamble that, yes, you can connect Star Trek to the universe of Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, it'll be wild.
I've played all of them at this point.
Oh my gosh.
Except for like the mobile ones that are on like a Nokia phone or something like that. At this point, I've played every available game.
I tried to play some more. I've played like half the games. I think I get what it's all about.
Okay. Yeah. No, I think that. No, trust me. Like half is more than enough. Yeah.
That's totally too many Assassin's Creed games to have played, I think.
That's a lot of creeds. Too many creeds to follow. Well, we're talking about that next week, but that's it for this week's Backtrekking. And thanks for listening. If you like the show, tell a friend. And you can follow us at Backtrekking on Twitter and tell us what you think that we should talk about in future episodes. Gooey, tell the people where they can find you online.
You can find me online at Twitter and YouTube. You can find me there at Gooey Fame.
Awesome. And I'm at K1IBAN on Twitter. You can find all the shows on the Just Enough Trope Network at Just Enough Trope on Twitter. And that is it for us for this week. We will see you soon. And until then, keep on trekking.